And I probably shouldn't say it was my early favorite for the $10,000 first prize. I had a little star next to it, but then a couple other poems creeped you out. But if you think that was a misjustice, you can vote for her in the Reader's Choice Award, and she can get the runner-up prize still. The deadline for that's February 1st. Not that I'm pitching for it or anything, because all the poems are great. Anyway, she's also won the Prime Poetry Prize from Arts and Letters, and she teaches high school English in Atlanta, Georgia. Here she is, Melissa King Rogers.
That blows my mind. You put a star by my name. So I teach high school, and I'm always telling my students that the reason that you study poetry and the reason that you study literature is that you want to be part of this big eternal conversation that goes on. But I teach high school, and I never leave my classroom, and I always know there's this conversation going out there that I'm not part of. So it's really exciting to be here and be doing a reading. So the first poem that I'm going to read is the one that Tim put a star by. So I got really obsessed about a year ago. Somebody put a base jumping video in my Facebook feed. And base jumping really fascinates me, and I would never ever do it, and I've made my 7-year-old son promise over and over he'll never base jump. But I think it's really interesting, this idea of defying death and doing things that are superhuman. And then I watched a few too many videos, and they're not all pleasant. So this poem is called Deus Ex Machina, which is a literary term for a plot device that's pulled out of nowhere. But it also means God from machine. And I love Hamlet, so it's got Hamlet in it. Deus Ex Machina, Royal Gorge Bridge, Colorado, October 3rd, 2003. How all occasions do inform against me, Hamlet says. Why yet I live to say this thing's to do. The day the world's top-ranked base jumper pitches headlong from a plane 1,200 meters above a rocky gorge in Colorado, where the world's tallest suspension bridge is packed with a couple hundred spectators waiting, cameras rolling, his bravado alone is above our grasp. At this stark height, we're queasy when we peek over the railing or fear the bridge might give beneath our weight. A half mile up, though, he's free-falling, sailing. At 120 mph, more missile than a man, a God-slung gauntlet in a wingsuit like a nylon pillowcase, taunting our undaring from the edge of some ungrounded self we'd be, undaunted as a child whose boundlessness our years replace with flat, pragmatic dread. No wonder that he snagged 1 million YouTube hits, his dives meticulous and clean, Olympian and airborne acrobatic grace that thrives on holy shit impossibility and practice calculated risk to trump the mortal ratio of balls to brains. Which is, of course, the point. We've come to see a showman on his 1,000-something jump, this time in tandem, straight out of a plane, by God, which milks the drama of the drop, wherein he'll pick up speed with gusto, strafe the bridge, the other guy glides under, pop his chute once they're both clear, and navigate the 90 stories down. Like leaping from the Empire State to touch down on the street, but after falling half a mile. No-brainer. He's that guy. He rode a bike off some Space Needle in Malaysia, pulled a neat dismount midair. He springs quadruple gainers off alpine cliffs. Some crazy shit each time. Yet you can't help but like him. Once plopped smack into a prickly pear, face full of spines. He plucked the needles one by one and cracked an acupuncture joke. His chute still pinned behind him like a shredded shroud. A grin, like Dad just caught him playing Superman and fucking up the drapes again. So, when he closes in, a flying speck, we scan the sky, a kind of gawking genuflection. The restless crowd swells in a giddy, oh. My heart beats in my throat, and then it happens. As a car wreck takes a life, And we don't know if our hands were on the wheel or if we tapped the brakes or crossed the median or swerved. He slams the rail, full force. So fast, so close, he might have taken one of us down too. A burst of flesh and fabric, like a bird on impact with a windshield. Like a ghost, his chute deploys and drifts, subdued and silent as a mobile on a crib. Then, fleet as Daedalus, his partner clears the bridge and lands, but he's barely a blip on a screen that no one's watching. We're all stunted, struck. We're playing back the shock, like waiting for the meteor to fall into the crater in the field before the crater is a crater or the rock's a meteor. We half thought he might crawl out from the distant sunken chute, but for the flat, inhuman thud, the iron hum that rumbled through the bridge's length, our souls still pulsing with the impact. Frame by frame, he's still a blur, no matter how I scroll down through each fuzzy screenshot. Yet it's clear the moment when we know. The way our cheers turn into howls, the way we duck as if a roof's about to cave, how we go stiff with terror, manning up to take the blow. Not one of us will say, or really know, what god-like guts that fussed in us unused lie limply in his wilted parachute, its crumpled flightless bundle thus relieving us of its human burden, our believing the need to prove ourselves somehow unbound, or that we're happy tethered to the ground. So believe that or not, that I started out to write a sonnet. That 80 lines later, I finally finished. This is my 20s were endless and miserable and horrible, and I so wish I could go back and do them again and be better. This is a poem about being young. It's called Happy Hour. Nobody minds the ticking clock at 23 except to catch the happy hour bread and brie gone by 5 with the good apples, leaving you the dregs, a flaccid fig, a filbert, some soggy slice of peach or pear, a pick-through pile of dates. Not the meal you'd meant to snatch, to spare your cash for beer with boys you hope this time might love you. At 23, you have no clue how juicy you are. Your supple skin won't say where your worry lines will sink. Your heart's plumb full, sweet thing, even in your driest spell. At 23, the body is no almanac. How firm your frame, how little you have shouldered, your vertebrae stacked clean and white as your calendar's grid, ova lined up for years and years, ripe and unsplit. Your body's yours to keep or give at 23, when you can't see how much in time will blossom or how full for now you're a glass. So my dad asked to read, my dad is 83, and my dad asked to read some of my poems. And then he said, you know, I kind of like poems that rhyme. And so I've got some poems that rhyme, Dad. And then he read one and he said, that doesn't rhyme. I was like, no, actually it does. And I wish I could show him this one because it so rhymes. This poem is so raunchy and I could never let my dad read it. So this poem is really crass and I'm sorry or you're welcome. So it's also about being young, but it's called 40. Not your forearm skin gone talcum slick and not your sprouting crown of sudden gray. Your pulsing kneecap aches electric hum. It's gonna blow. Not that. Hooray instead for tall boy PBRs and dope at punk rock shows and braless summer tanks. Not folded over unlicked envelopes for tits. And not the mammogram that yanks and steamrolls flat your breast and poor mesh nipples to thin papyrus sheets of biscuit dough. Hell no! You're still the fast-flung thing that ripples through the boys, the tail and pigtails combo who parts a sea or two. A wave, all right, of magic wand that's kept you so well kept. But don't sag gentle butt cheeks in the night. Let old age burn and rave, but not just yet. So breasts, you keep it up, and ovaries, put out. You scary chin hair, ne'er do well. Oh, let the flesh be firm. Resolve that these next decade years go slow as bloody hell. Be young, be drunk, be decadent, be crass. That coke and bourbon carpet burn floor fuck that made a Berber template of your ass, amen to that. And other such shock luck that keeps a veil of almost youth to guard you, so when you buy your next six-pack, they'll card you. All right, you can't tell, but I grew up really straight-laced and Southern Baptist. I spent a lot of time in summer Bible camps. And this one is sort of about that. It's called Recluse. We were drawn to them the way kids crave adults who are not their parents. Camp coaches we could carve out crushes on and not feel creepy. He was a grizzly, big hands, a mean spiral. He called the plays in pickup football after prayer circle where they'd one-up each other for the roughest stack and wear their bruises like medals. We girls hung sidelines for boys we hoped would notice. I'd watch my breath fill the air and disappear. Imagine her back then, pigtails and pom-poms, quarterback sweetheart cheering his passes. To be in love like that. We ogled her wallet snapshots like flashcards for some far-off future. Homecoming tiara, honeymoon sunset, reception shots with their grown-up secrets, his thick thumbs up her dress, snapping the garter at her thigh. She taught us how to weave a French braid that wouldn't unravel, how you could cry through waterproof mascara, how to pluck your eyebrows. Ice it first, she said. You won't feel the sting. None of us expected her to lift her flannel nightgown to show us the scarred leg, scooped out like a cantaloupe, half her thigh grafted over with her own flesh for what the venom took. A lumpy seal of skin like pressed candle wax. She never saw the spider. Just an itch at first, the ache too late, her flesh already rotting to the bone. Could have been worse, she said, but the thread of her voice pulled taut and thin, and I couldn't stop wondering where they got the good skin, what other parts of her were missing. Later we'd hear her husband cheated on her with some woman he'd been seeing since the fall. They'd left the church when the whispers spread of that sort of man with our children. Cruel and 14, virgin, stupid, we joked of the grotesque flesh that drove him away. In that hunger not to be lonely, I laughed with them. But later, I'd think of her, lying alone in their bed, her hands searching for his touch. How even touching herself must have been like feeling someone else's skin. How she'd come to borrow a piece of us, something unpoisoned to hold on to. So this is a poem about one of my students, one of my former students. It's called Mockingbird. At 19, my former student jacks a car with a toy gun. Give me the keys, he says. But he carries her groceries in, unlocks her door, can't leave her alone in the cold, she looks so scared. Not even an hour later, he's in handcuffs. He'll get 15, 10 if they go easy, a soft judge. I can still see him in detention, another heart-to-heart on follow-through, some shit story, yes ma'am, yes ma'am. Bless him, he cares more about failing me than flunking lit. He's loved every book since freshman year and swears he doesn't even like to read and tells me I'm his favorite teacher ever, as if he fears I'll bear his failures as my own. How this boy does this. His mother can't find words to tell me why. She mimes a toy gun he once played with like she's sifting through hand-me-downs she can't give up. Her last hope's my letter to show the judge her son's good heart. To be mother, she says, it is so hard. You have child? He has her face, delicate Ethiopian bones cut clean as a cameo. His mugshot could be the tender boy I taught at 14, the year my own son was born. Baby skin smooth and unblemished, heavy lashes, dark wet eyes that welled up in disbelief when Maycomb killed Tom anyway, when even Atticus could not save him. This is called I Dream My Mother in a Beauty Parlor. I get a pedicure, Mom a cut and dye. Clippings white as bleached gauze drift in clusters like milk thistle gone to seed. She picks red velvet, she likes the name. It dries to the bruised hue of an heirloom tomato, the obviously dyed hair of an old woman. I tell her it looks great. She's my mother and you can't insult the dead, not when they come unbeckoned, and after all, I've never had a pedicure in Mom's treating. Even in dreams, my feet are my mother's. Wearied calluses she'd trim with flat blades that left squares of rust at the sink beside the tweezers for the chin hair she hated. Chemo takes what you want to hang on to, she says, and leaves what shit you'd wish you'd shed. Mom wouldn't be caught dead saying shit, so I know I'm dreaming, and wake, remembering she left us, so slowly it slipped us. Even when she went dizzy baking cupcakes with my nephew and fell to the floor like an old tree. Tyler crying, Nana, Nana, did you hurt your hair? Her wig beside her like a struck animal. Alright, this is my last poem. It's a poem in 4 sections. It's called Grief Topography. 1. Long after the bit-through cheek quits weeping, the dumb tongue studies the open wound again, as if to seek some glum comfort in the ache's iron, lay claim to the raw terrain. As a child's fingers memorize mountains mapped in relief, as a mourner makes a rubbing of a headstone to keep the chiseled names of the dead in a bureau drawer. 2. We hacked down the hive and torched it, and the sad wasps circled for days, tending dead eggs still fat and white as swollen grains of rice in their charred cells. In weeks, the hive went unremembered. It lay abandoned like a paper carcass. The tissue paper skin broke away in wisps, spiraling up into the wind like confetti after a parade. 3. A scar is an artifact of raised runes, pictograms on a prison wall marking time. Broken, the flesh remembers. 4. In broken English, my student tells me of a month of nights he lay awake on the floor of a Taliban jail with a cellmate twice his age in a room that barely held both their bodies. Curled up against the cold desert air, they drew in each other's exhaled breath like twins in a sandy womb. Their hushed voices carved a hole in the silence where they kept the faces of their lost mothers. The night was a box they opened and closed like a locket. Then rebels rushed the camp, broke them loose, carted them up a mountain road in a shepherd's cargo truck, and they split up, shouting goodbyes over a herd of bleeding goats. Navid's cellmate embraced him, buried his face into his chest, then sank his teeth in deep, breaking the skin. So you always remember me, and laughed. Navid smiles now and lifts his shirt, gestures toward his chest like Sacred Heart Jesus. At his collarbone, still purple, the faint stamp of 2 clean rows of teeth. Crater on a map, broken circle, empty parentheses, holding a name unspoken on the tip of the tongue. Thank you.
Thanks, that was Melissa King Rogers. Thanks, Melissa.